you've got your seats. Now make sure that there's enough space between your seats so you're not bumping into each other. And here's the activity. So one person sits and has one hand on their forehead, the other hand on the back of their head, and rolls their head. And the rest of you observe. So one person is the actor, the rest is the audience. Person that's doing the rolling of the head, first of all, notice what it feels like to be observed. You know, what happens here or somewhere else, yeah? And then give that up. It's a silly business. And then please revisit, person sitting, rolling the head, please revisit the 3 different ways of rolling your head. Do you remember those? Oh, the 3 different ways of rolling your head. Now, I won't say what they are. Oh, teacher's game. I won't say what they are, but as you go around, notice as the person observe, oh, sorry, let me get this clear. As you're watching the person roll their head, and as they change from one method of rolling their head to another, can you see the difference? So that's the activity for the observers. Can you see the difference as the person showing demonstrates 1, 2, 3, and then you just simply switch roles. Okay? So for clarity, a brief reiteration, you're rolling your head between your hands and you're showing your observers 3 different ways of doing that are quite distinct. And just leave enough space for the camera to get a shot of this guy. Yeah. is as skinny as you. Oh, yeah, he beats you hands down. I think you're a bit more fleshed out in body and mind. I've got a bone. All right, so as I was wandering around, you were having all sorts of conversations about the different things that you were seeing and inquiring into each other's experience and pointing out variations and things like that. And that's exactly what that activity was about. Yeah, just to bring you back into observing, noticing, whatever, without trying to make anything overly formal too quickly, which I'll do right now. No. So, you know, when you ask somebody, well, can you show me at least 3 different ways? There's a reason for that. Because the argument is, unless you have 3 different ways of doing something, you really don't have a choice. Like yes or no, pretty primitive. Yes, will do it, won't do it. But if you have at least 3 different ways, you've got a semblance of free choice. And more importantly, if you can keep on generating new ways, generating being the underscored capital parentheses word, that means you have the capacity to generate new choices as you want them to be. Yeah? So there's that aspect, and that activity was partially investigating that. From the point of view of what is available mechanically in the skeleton, Feldenkrais, when he teaches these kinds of lessons, really tries to point out to 3 particular variations. And that's not to say that your variations weren't valid or whatever. This is just narrowing down the scope so that you can experiment with fewer variables rather than 101. Make sense? Okay. So, first one. And when I was looking around the room, I think, Kevin, I saw you doing this and some other. Yeah, so the first variation is hands' planks, and literally you get that. So if you look closely here, you'll see that at any moment in time, a different part of the hand is in contact with a different part of the skull. Can you see that? Now, notice what happened here. The elbows are moving in space. Would you agree? Good. Yeah. Now, so geometrically, because you got to remember the guy's an engineer, right? So he thinks in terms of geometry. So geometrically, you have flat plank, 2 flat planks. That's it. Yeah, makes sense? All right. So that's number 1. Number 2 is you wrap the hand, or you mightn't wrap the hand, but you do this, and then there is no change in relative contact between the head and the hand. Can you see that? Now, notice, look what happens in my wrists. Can you see how the wrists bend and the wrists bend? Now, look at the difference. Yeah, so that's number 2. Can't show that on that. Sorry? Yeah. Oh, yeah, I could do that. Thanks, Lucky. I need all the help I can get. Yeah. So this way, can you see, once again, notice where that takes you logically? And so what limits you? Well, how much you can flex the wrist. That becomes the source of limitation. Now, the third way is a little bit different. So notice in both of these ways, can you see how the head, the chin in particular, moves relative to the sternum? So you get a change in position of chin to sternum, and even in the second way, it's the same thing. The third way is that, I can't, yeah? You actually turn the head and the hands, but everything goes. Looks a bit like, what does it look like? Yeah, that's the name I'm looking for. It's Qigong, Tai Chi twist. Yeah. Notice how the arm, yeah. Well, that's a nice side effect, but can you see that this is now totally different? Now, when I've seen all of these options walking around the room, each one of you demonstrated as well as many. So really, this is like whether you've got your hands like this or whether you've got your hands like that, you're literally doing this. Now, notice that there's no movement of the head relative to the chin at all, but perceptually, it feels like you're turning your head relative to the room. Yeah? So this turning of the head is relative to the body and the room. This turning of the head is relative to the body and the room. This turning of the head is just relative to the room. Yeah? Can you see those three differences? So could you go back with your team and could you show distinctly each one of those? Take your time. And please feel free to kindly remind each other of the three options.